And we are back at Bark After Dark, although I think, as Octopus Inc. Games has said in the chat already, it might be more appropriate to call this Dog Eat Sandwich for you in the States here, because we are streaming during lunchtime. Oh my god, Luke Gearing is in the chat. Mods, can we do something about that? Yeah. Just ban or kick. Yeah, really a terrible way to start this stream. I am Cameron Danger, Strip Matter, host and warden of the Panic Table, Mothership RPG's single most electrifying actual play show, and I have the absolute pleasure of sitting here with the co-conspirators behind Peregrine Coast Press today. Gentlemen, let's work from Eric to Josh and just sort of sound off with who we are, what we do, and yeah, we'll go from there. How does that sound?
Cool, sounds good. Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Eric. So I run Peregrine Coast Press. We're publishing JOHNSON². In my day job, I'm a trade union organizer for the video games industry and the tabletop industry in the UK. And I work at Soul Muppet as operations manager.
I'm Sam. I'm one of the writers at Peregrine Coast Press, and I also write films, make films. I've got a horror film out at festivals at the minute, and sort of generally just in a creative weirdo, I guess is what you'd put it as.
That's the criteria for being here.
Yeah, so I'm Josh. I'm also one of Eric's imps, writing occasionally for Peregrine Coast Press. Previously a transmission for them, a solo RPG and game, but this time something a lot zanier with JOHNSON² for Mothership.
Absolutely zany. And in fact, you might be wondering, how did I arrive at this stream? What am I doing here? I advise for you to seek medical help. It's really strange to arrive at a live stream on a YouTube channel. That's a weird thing to do. But if you're here by design, it's because you want to learn more about JOHNSON², one of 21 offerings happening during Mothership Month, which someone has pointed out is not so much a month as like a proper mouthfeel for a span of time bridging two separate months, and it's even explaining it now, I'm boring myself, so we're gonna move right past that one into, fellows, what I must say is an absolute darling amongst the other creators. I've interviewed about 12. I think you might be the 12th, the dozen most of our interviews, and I want to say at least 7 of them were like, you know what I'm looking forward to is JOHNSON². Man, yeah, who wants to give this spiel for the viewers at home about what this even is?
Yeah, I'll go for that.
Okay.
So JOHNSON² is essentially a farcical corporate murder mystery. A Cronenbergian romp featuring sabotage, corporate spies, backstabbing, and 7 suspects who happen to be 7 identical clones of the same man. It's silly.
What? Absolute madness. So who's responsible for coming up with this? Why did it happen? Who can we blame?
Well, Eric kind of came to us and said, hey, so there's this thing called Mothership Month happening. It closes in about 2 days. Do we have any ideas for initial pitches? And I think Sam's exact thought was like, we could do something with clones, but that'd be really stupid. And then we all just kind of glommed onto it. And then the Johnson thing came pretty quick, and then the Richard Johnson, just really doubled down on the joke, came pretty sharp as well.
Now,
yeah, truly, this is stupid. We can't do it. To hear was the timeline.
I relate to that on a like profoundly animal level. I think I was like, what's not scary? Dogs are nice, and just trying to think of the dumbest thing that we could loop into it. But dumb isn't what you do, Josh. You have a penchant, as you claim on your backer kit page, for writing horror and historical fiction. What's that about?
Well, yeah, that's my screenplays mostly, but since Eric introduced me to, the dreaded 5e back in 2017, RPGs have been taking up more and more of my time. And like sci-fi horror is just kind of in my blood, so Mothership's a really good avenue for that. Obviously JOHNSON² is kind of a departure from that world, but hope, kind of the non-traditional Mothership, but hopefully we get to do more of the traditional hopefully we get to do more of the traditional Mothership stuff in the future as well, because zaniness is not exactly my regular thing. It's more of a Sam's thing. So so in the development, that's where I've been like, I don't know, is that one too many jokes? I don't know. And then the meeting in the
back
middle
and forth is,
somewhere.
I think this is a bit serious now. There's not enough dick jokes here. It's a real. There's been a real hard back and forth.
So what I'm hearing, Sam, is that you are to blame for the tone of Johnson². Is that a correct accusation?
I guess a little bit. I mean, it has been a team effort, and Eric does love a silly joke, so Eric has definitely contributed with that as well. But I think it's been a real strong team effort, because I think finding horror in the absurd has been a real fun task of this. And just finding horror and drama in places where it kind of seems silly and daft, but then letting you have a good time around that, I think has been the sweet spot.
I want to sort of ease into the tub of this conversation, even as I'm regretting using that metaphor. And I think that, similar to just talking about Josh's penchant, I would love to hear about your Do Not Open film. Would you mind giving us just a quick little elevator pitch about that?
Yeah, so that's a found footage film shot on and animated on Super 8 film. And it's a horror about 3 friends who go on a short holiday, and the survivor, the cameraman, realizes that they've been stalked the entire time by a monster that if you witness it, you go mad.
Yep.
And you want to pull your own eyes out. And so what he does is he goes back through and he scrapes the film. And that's what I did. I scraped the film out. So it's this really sort of, by hand with a knife.
Ah, wow, that's so cool.
So it's a really tight 10-minute short horror film about really looking at voyeurism and perspective in horror.
Now, is this something that's publicly available yet, or is it still on the festival circuit and will be out in due time?
It's in festival circuit. It should be out next year. I'm really excited to share that with everyone.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. We made something called Void Stream for Mothership, which is found footage horror toolkits for table side use. So hit me up after this. We were doing some things. I would love to take a peek under that hood and using
I'm
that
sure there's a secret copy we can send.
Eric, be cooler than Sam. Ready, go.
Shit, where do I go? How do I beat that?
I want to talk specifically about Pierogi Core.
Yeah. Because I'm a graphic designer, right? I'm a graphic designer, and I crowdfunded a project back in February called Milk Bar, which is about kind of communists in an alternate timeline Poland building a base in these kind of communist restaurants called milk bars. And pierogi, I'm Polish. I was born in Poland, and pierogi are a key part of the cuisine in Poland. And I was like, okay, what can I use to give myself an edge as a designer? It's like, I'll take inspiration from
potatoes.
The pierogi.
It's my wife's single favorite food. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. That's really exciting, and you are the main brain behind running Peregrine Coast Press. Is that a proper assertion?
We have a little studio. We have a little studio here in Leeds. So we've been kind of like publishing books for a couple of years, and I run a little shop. I'm a big OSR head, so mainly stock like design first OSR games. I kind of pride myself in curating like a really strong selection of stuff that, if I was to pick it up in a shop and go, fuck, this is amazing. And I think I'm kind of pulling it off.
Yeah. It's certainly cool seeing you around the old blue sky strutting your stuff. You had a really Eric makes great thoughtful posts. Just go. I'm not going to link it in below because that seems invasive on a personal level. But speaking of interpersonal chemistry, the three of you, I would love to know more about making a product as a team in an event like Mothership Month. How has that been? You certainly seem like you like each other or are putting on an excellent show. How did this come to be? What's the deal there?
Eric, I think you should take this one.
Yeah, I mean, we are friends. We went to film school together. That's how we all know each other. We started playing 5e together. So, we've been friends for like 5-6 years now, probably longer.
Longer.
And longer, yeah, shit. So working together is like the deadlines, because especially because I realized that Mothership month was so close, and I messaged Carrick like, "Oh my god, fuck, is this? You know, have we got enough time to submit something?" And he said, "Yeah, you've got like 2 days." So there was a lot of like straddling the deadline as we all kind of in a single Word document trying to
Awesome.
edit stuff together, and so it was a lot of work.
Yeah, not
big
always
learning
smooth
curve on that.
sailing, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the last thing we made, we had what was essentially infinite time, so we just sat and did it for whenever we could. And on this one, it was like, it's in tomorrow. Oh, God!
Congratulations, by the way. Like, you, like every single person in Mothership Month, I think had their socks blown off as the campaign just really launched way past anything we would expect in the first 2 ding-dang days. Right now you're sitting at a really, as of this broadcast, 16,000 pounds and change. Well done. That must be tremendously exciting. Just see it blow the heck up. Are there any things I should be shamelessly plugging here at the beginning, as far as if you're watching Stick Money in the Slot, because are we stretch goal free?
We're stretch goal free. I have I've been involved in massive Kickstarters like Orbital Blues and Paint a Tan Red, and I'm like looking at stretch goals makes my heart rate tick up. So I thought, okay, we'll do this simple. We'll make the book. I'm treating myself, because we've absolutely blown past the goal, so I am treating myself to like printing with some Pantones. I'm going to get a nicer type of paper, but that's about as far as we're going.
Ooh la la.
You say you're treating yourself to a nicer type of paper.
Yeah.
Double ply. It's going to be great.
Yeah. If anything, though, if you want to like submit some more money, it'll just be because you really like the look of it and you want us to make more, basically.
I think that's a totally valid stretch goal. I would love to talk about cultural influences. Like, when y'all think about, hello Texas, think about JOHNSON², what comes to mind? Which came first, chicken or the egg, as far as the art style versus the module itself, etc.
I'd love to talk about
art style.
The art style.
Yeah, the art style was very late. We had a couple of artists in mind, and as we were looking through some of their portfolios, we saw one of them. It was kind of like our artist Kyle. His work, like a lot of it, is very much like the antithesis of Mothership typically, and we realized that's kind of what we wanted to reflect on the corporate Memphis style, and then do the Cronenberg spin on that. So that was the brief we sent to him, was Cronenberg corporate Memphis, of kind of take that kind of the Fallout Vault Boy type aesthetic, a bit of that type stuff, and then just a bit of the kind of really colorful poppy kind of corporate imagery that gets put in pamphlets and things, and then just really put it through a blender to get put the tone across as like surface read. This might seem quite silly, but it's still Mothership, and there's still a lot of grisly stuff happening underneath.
Anything to add to that, boys?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'd love to add. Early on, there was that we were chatting about that Cronenberg corporate Memphis, and we were looking up, and there was no art like it, and we were like, oh, we've stumbled upon something here that might be quite unique. The only reference image we could find to send Kyle is a corporate art painting of Saturn eating his son. We were like, yeah, okay, that's the image we send. And then we just, write a list of very goofy, horrific shit to get done in a very clean, bright cover style.
Yeah, and one of the other things was the kind of... Oh, go on, Eric, you go.
No, yeah, so I literally that week or the week before bought a copy of Death by Island by Tim Denay, and it's got that really striking kind of Swiss style layout where it's all grid based and very clean. And the other project that I'm working on right now is like Wog inspired. It's all fucked up and it looks like a medieval manuscript. I thought, okay, this is the exact thing that I want to work on right now. It's just clean and really flex that grid.
When you think about killing your own clones, what comes to mind? As culturally speaking, you're all film people.
My clone or Johnson's?
That's the question too. Yeah, like maybe at the end of our conversation, we all have our clone contingencies. I would love to hear that. But for now, yeah, as we think through like like, Cronenberg is an obvious one there. I recently fell absolutely head over heels in love with. Have you had the privilege of seeing The Substance? It came out.
Oh, glorious,
Yeah.
glorious
So much fun.
body horror. Yeah.
So much fun. Like, I think the truest love letter to Cronenberg I've ever seen, and like a totally valid successor. It's just exquisite. But yeah, I mean, you've got these almost like Monopoly money vibes on something truly troubling underneath. Help me square this away. Do the players play as the deputized clones, or are they totally different people?
No, yeah. So you're someone Janus Corp has paid to go in and investigate cases of corporate espionage that is happening at Gemini Station, which is where the clones of Johnson work. So the idea is that Johnson is a brilliant scientist that is just absolutely insufferable, and no one wants to work with him. So they said, right, you can work with yourself. We'll just clone you 7 times to share the workload.
Big Rick energy. That's great. So as a warden, then, this is a key question for playing this game. Do the Johnsons all have the same? Like, is it a matter of nuance, Johnson to Johnson, as far as having just slightly different performances per person, or do you, in your own heads, picture distinct Johnsons?
They are pretty distinct. As we started, we started with 12 Johnsons, brought that down to 7, but yeah, we've made them kind of like. They're kind of like twisted mirror images of each other. So they're all kind of like egomaniacs and stuff, but they have like distinct tics and traits and kind of compulsions, which kind of help them disperse them across the station. So you've got some people who are really into like body modification, genetic splicing, and some people who are just really germophobic. So some of the Johnsons, there's all this kind of like mad scientist obsession stuff, but the fixations differ slightly.
Chuthada, aka Elliot Norwood, in the chat says, "Can players make clones to help them out?"
I guess the facilities are there, so I mean, potentially.
That's fun.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
In theory, you could clone yourself and have a Johnson memory imprinted into it, so you could get a Johnson that looks like you if you wanted.
I can't wait to play this. Brass tacks questions. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, because there's the whole thing. There's a biological cloning process, but there's also like a psychic imprinting thing. So when Johnsons come out of the vat fully grown, they already have all that genius and madness already baked in. But
that's exquisite. How when you're playing this game, what is the and forgive me if you said this at the beginning, but like brass tacks things like page count, expected session length as you're playing through Johnson². Is this a one shot? Is this a 2 to 3, or is this just a whole world you can delve into, conservatively speaking?
I would say it's definitely a probably a long one shot. Depends how methodical your players want to be, but yeah, it's fairly limited in scope. It's kind of the Agatha Christie type setting of like all your suspects are in one place. So part of the game is that you keep having to like bring the suspects into the canteen for those kinds of like Poirot-esque court sessions of confronting them with the evidence and matching the suspicions of some Johnsons to others and things like that. So it's meant to be like a bottle episode type story.
That was a polite
in terms
pause.
of page count, I mean, we're really we're just going hard on the details. So I think right now we're looking at about 60 pages. So you get the book and you could run it a few times with the intention being that it'd be pretty starkly different every time that you do run it.
I love that, and that at the heart you have this mystery of what's going on. So I'd like to talk a little bit about building a mystery collaboratively and how that plays out, especially with something as open-ended and liquid as Mothership as a base rule set. I feel like having something that is usually with murder mysteries can be quite tightly wound. How do you move around that? Thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a lot of experience in murder mysteries, and we kind of took that attitude to building it. So even though it is about corporate espionage, we did really sort of treat it like a murder mystery in terms of how the players can approach the characters you meet. So, each suspect will have, things that make them suspicious or things they might be trying to hide that are totally incidental to the plot at large. So giving you stuff to explore and reasons to go to different places on the back of leads you will get was how we sort of went about it.
And kind of logistically, we started off with a big Google Docs document, and at a certain point, we got to the stage like, oh god, this is like expanding my brain too much, and it's painful. So we went into a Miro board and just started to like try and arrange all of these events and all these characters and these locations and how they all interlinked and what led to what. It looks like that kind of, the classic like pin board with the
red string. I love that.
Yeah. It looks insane. Yeah.
Speaking of insane, you caught me zoning out in the midst of it to just take in the artwork here, which is absolutely sensational. Is everything here on the backer kit page? Is that all Kyle's work as that we're seeing?
Yeah, he's the only illustrator that we're working with.
I'm referring specifically to the praying mantis Johnson, I presume.
That's his proper name is Insectoid Johnson. That's kind of how the naming scheme works. Most of them are color designated, so Cyan Johnson, etc. But then there's a couple oddballs in there, like Insectoid Johnson or Atavistic Johnson is also maybe one of my favorites.
Let's talk about hazards, dangers. I think something that's core to Mothership that anybody who's played more than a few games know is that jury rigging is one of those skills that's at like the heart of any teamster's approach to getting through stuff. And so here it seems like you've enunciated that even further inside of JOHNSON², as the Johnsons themselves have been secretly forming their own different utensils and tools. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so
I think because go on.
So there's a whole host of very brilliant, intelligent people on Gemini Station creating their own items to save their own skin or to pursue their own goals. So people are creating hacking devices and guns, and there's all sorts of secret horrible devices littered about workshops, and a workshop the players can use as well,
right,
to steal inventions and jury rig things.
Josh, what were you gonna say?
I say just to kind of that kind of bottle ship episode thing is that when they walk into this highly secure place, like their weapons are handed over, or at least they're politely asked to. Whether the players comply, that's another thing. But part of it is the idea of relinquish your weapons. You're going into a secure space. The company does not want you kicking doors down and shooting people. Like it's a highly sensitive mission. So the idea is to be tactful, so to be a little bit clever. So if the need for weapons arises, which it probably will, it's all about cobbling that stuff together once you're in there.
Yeah,
which is where the idea for the Shinzo Abe gun came from.
That's what I was reaching for. Yeah.
And then the news broke recently of like a different transparent homemade gun being used somewhere in Japan again. And we were like, Kyle, right, we'll pay you more, just keep drawing these guns, please.
If you're just joining us, I am with the brain trust behind JOHNSON², a farcical whodunit that's occurring right now during Mothership. If you're in the chat, like my pal Gina, oh hey Gina, fire questions, accusations, adumbrations away, and we'll do our best to field those or flee from them. Mods, I can't tell, but it looks like you did actually kick Luke Gearing out, and you know what? Good riddance. What a terrible person. So I'm glad to see that was effective. But yes, we are plowing in now. Because murder mystery is at the heart of this thing, and farce is I think, absolutely the authorial intent. Do the players themselves function as the Gather everyone up. It's time for me to summarize the crime type person. Or is there yet another inspector who is the... It was the butler at the end of it.
So it's the players.
Okay.
There's a corporate... there's an administrator on the station who kind of acts as the warden's potential stand-in to be like, okay, well, here are the rules, here are the expectations from corporate. Like, I want regular reports and your findings and things like that. So it's more of the client, but the players are, they are Poirot in this case, or Miss Marple, whatever you want to be. So the players are really driving that kind of drama forward.
I'm curious, and this is totally arbitrary, of course, but I'm sure every designer has their own theories on this. What's the ideal group size for wading through something as chaotic as Johnson²?
Ooh, probably 2 to 4 for sure.
Okay.
I think if you have tons of people, you could just spread out, and that can,
Everyone takes a Johnson, and you just kind of.
Yeah, batter them.
I'm looking through things. I don't know if it bears mentioning that Chris Eyre is involved in yet again another Mothership Month thing. Let's just note that as we move along. Speaking of Mothership Month, I would love to sort of branch out because there's an embarrassment of people in this chat today. On screen today, and I would love to hear what each of you are excited about. In Mothership Month, because I think the one really dangerous thing about doing a group collaboration is the double-edged sort of being like, well, now I have to fight the impulse to buy every single thing I see here. What's stood out? What are some darlings? Eric, do you mind if I throw the ball to you first?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really, really excited for Mega Damage. I've got like a bit of a background in magazine publishing, so anything that it looks insane, so I'm really excited for that. I'm a big fan of Lone Archivist's work as well. I did some fulfillment for him for Tide Break, so I'm really excited to see that. I mean, Chris's work is always amazing as well, so I could keep reading them off. But the good thing about running a shop is that I will at some point buy like 15 copies of all of this stuff and get to hold it. So I don't have to pay with my own personal card either. So yeah.
Yeah, I backed a few projects. I think, in particular, excited about Awaiting the Burning Gods. I love the whole Lost Civilization, Indiana Jones meets Stargate thing. It's kind of a scope of like adventure and Mothership that I've not really played before, and I quite like the idea of it being adventurous horror as opposed to just getting mulched the space station straight away horror. Yeah.
Which, let's be real, Mothership is a lot of getting mulched.
It is.
Yeah.
The wood chipper response to horror. Please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. I'm saying, but yeah, I like the idea of doing more expansive stuff. But yeah, go on, Sam. Sorry.
Yeah, that one just looked good. I feel so bad I cannot remember the name of Chris's, but I love anything to do with drugs in games like this that have strange effects. In games like this. And only. I've also heard that Dog Eat Dog is going to be pretty good, but I don't know if it's a reputable source on that.
Hard to say. You've said things that have intrigued me, and not just my own work, but specifically, I want to start talking about horror. But before I do, Shock in the chat says, "How did you cut down from 12 Johnsons to 7? Where did you draw the line? And how did Insectoid Johnson make the cut? Who were the ones on the floor?"
So we kind of just consolidated some of the plot elements and being like, okay, well, we've kind of got like a germophobic Johnson and like an anxious Johnson. They fit together. Let's put those together. So the seven prime Johnsons is one thing. The Insectoid Johnsons are kind of a rogue faction of Johnsons who've escaped the facility and live outside. So that's another. To be honest, their existence can really swing the module depending on how the players interact with that. I don't know if anyone's ever played the Tempany Towers questline in Fallout 3, but that's a bit of an inspiration.
Amazing.
For how that might go. So yes, there's the prime Johnsons, and then there's the slightly more zany stranger ones on the outside.
Yeah, there's all kinds of Johnsons in this.
Yeah, while we're on the subject, who's our favorite Johnson? Let's go participant by participant, shall we? Pick a Johnson. Eric?
It's going to be Atavistic Johnson for me.
Yeah. That's incredible.
I love Blue Johnson. Blue Johnson is such a useless prick.
So Blue Johnson's the one that just likes to hoard stationery as well, right? That's one of his little side
I think he's the neat freak. Points his finger at everyone else.
Yeah, I am partial to Insectoid Johnson, and it was funny. Like the I think the day before I mentioned that to Kyle, he'd watched Cronenberg's The Fly for the first time, so it was really in his mind, and the work he did for it is great. It looks fantastic.
Let's talk a little bit about.
Have Small Johnson.
Yes, small. Yeah,
Lil Johnson.
Yes. Small Johnson is psychologically has the mind of all the other Johnsons, but his body didn't come out the vat right, so he looks like a child. But he's as like capricious and mean. In fact, if anything, I think he's got like psychic powers. Like he's got Small Johnson, but he's got a big head. So it's kind of like those mutants from Planet of the Apes 2. The ones that live underground and worship the atom bomb.
Right.
Yeah.
Morlock Johnson. You mentioned Cronenberg as this reaffirming undergirding of the horror of it. Mutagenic serums. What's the deal there? What can players expect to enjoy? How did you go about thinking through it, etc.?
Yeah, that's kind of the MacGuffin of the whole thing. The reason Janus Corp sends you in is they're working on a mutagenic serum in Gemini Station as like kind of a bioweapon. So, think T-virus, but, more horrific. Well, if you can get more horrific than like Resident Evil monsters. And so, it's there and it exists in several different forms and you can find it, you can use it, but someone is trying to steal it from the station. And I think, Josh, you were a big fan of like trying to push how we use that, right? And how it affected the players and having it used more.
Yeah, because it's a tool and it's a weapon. So depending on how you roll on the table, and how well you do in your body saves and things, so some of it can be useful to you, and some of it can just be an instant death, and you turn into a big slobbering raging monster. And it's a tool that some of the kind of conspiring Johnsons are using in the station as well, in various forms, aerosol and syringe gun.
Right. That's fun. I'm gonna take the chat and go in order of ascending usefulness of questions. Starting at the bottom, as Raphael says, any possibility of a sequel, Johnson cubed. Let's start there. Yes or no?
Well, maybe we should take a canonical ending.
Yeah. You become a Johnson yourself and you elevate to the next level of access. Axiom Delver says, plot twist, the serum turns everyone into a Johnson. They also ask, do you have any tips for GMs on how to run all of the Johnsons at the same time? This is actually when you're doing your Hercule Poirot and everybody's gathered in the conservatory. How does one Johnson it up?
Yeah, I think they've all got distinct personalities. So just pick a Johnson voice and then just, when you've got a red Johnson wants to say something in a blue, just say them both back to back with the slightly different tones, and your job's done.
Please.
I think part of Chris's advice when he was looking through our initial drafts was to write the character descriptions. The way the characters are described are through quotes in which they have said, which seem, are quite flavorful and hopefully give a good indication of what the Johnsons are like. And so they're quite distinct. So hopefully that is a good tool for, prospective wardens out there to kind of inhibit their inner Johnson.
Inside every person there are two Johnsons, and the one that comes out is the one that you feed. I think that's really, really important. Ascending on it, as a fan of murder mysteries, says Shock in the chat, what elements of that genre do you think are important for Wardens to really keep front of mind as they run Johnson²? What are the tropes?
That's a great question. I think the tropes to keep in mind when you're running a murder mystery is that every character, well, the character who's done it has a means, a motive, and an opportunity, and everyone else should have one or two of those, but never all three. So we have kind of a guide in there about who's done it and how to run that, and then just keep that in mind that everyone else needs to have maybe a reasonable motive or maybe a reasonable chance to have done it but hasn't, and that way you'll keep your players very suspicious of everyone, which is exactly what you want.
And it does help in this thing in particular that pretty much all of them are guilty of something. So that is the thing of like,
so every Johnson's a bit dodgy.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's just a room full of dodgy Johnsons.
This game. That's going. I think that might be the episode title. A room full of dodgy Johnsons. Luke Gearing says, did you find yourself discovering more about Johnson Prime as you learned more about his various incarnations?
I think there's still some dispute between us about what the fate of Johnson Prime was. I think so far it's still a little bit abstract. I like the idea that he'd been long gone and that these Johnsons have been rattling around this station for untold eons. Still based on the mold of a long dead insane man, but
one of the early drafts involved like a sort of subplot where Prime Johnson was there, but none of them could agree on who it was, and so if you brought it up, it would immediately cause chaos. But it kind of became very difficult to justify having that in.
Because part of the thing is that new Johnsons are brought in fairly often because their job is extremely lethal. So if one of them gets mauled by some praying mantis monster in a cage, the corporate would rather just liquidate that Johnson and birth a new one, because bringing in a new one is cheaper than putting the other one through, I don't know, healthcare. So new Johnsons are coming in all the time, and whoever the oldest one is, they become the most senior Johnson and project supervisor, which then puts them at odds with all the other Johnsons, even though they are the same person.
Did you hear a strange thing come through the computer? Was that there was a giggle in the middle of that, or am I hallucinating mid-show?
No, that was Eric definitely giggling at.
Oh, very good.
Some Johnson pun. I can't remember which one. There's too many.
The things we can talk about Johnson-wise. I love that trope, Sam and Josh. Specifically, I was reading through the Wassailing of Klaus Manor. Are you familiar with this one? It's a real Christmas gem of an RPG. Yeah, so it's a Yuletide whodunit with a very A24 sort of Midsommar type approach to Christmas. But one of the, it's not even the main problem, but Santa pulls you aside at some point and explains that he is Santa Prime, but has been cloning himself to better make, efficiencies. And then the instruction book asks you to do this multiple times across the adventure. So, a really nervous Santa will grab you and be like, we have to find the other Santa. I'm the main one. And every time you see him, he does that. And so...
That's such a good bit.
Just the chaos.
That's a really good bit.
The true Johnsons were the Johnsons we made along the way, says Matt Pena. Man, it just doesn't stop with this one.
No, and it won't.
If you're just joining us, we are in the midst of accosting the minds behind Johnson², Mothership Month module of Johnson cloning mayhem, in which we've gathered that it's unclear for how long the Johnsons have been replicating, or for what purpose at this point, and every once in a while, it's unclear if Eric is going to be all right. I trust that he will be as he rejoins. He was slowly disambiguating as a presence, and I liked it was as we were talking about narrative obscurity. We will... welcome back. Well done, friend. That was beautiful. Yeah. So I think if you've just joined us, this is a great time to hurl some questions our way, and we'll try and work those in. Yes, Octopus Inc. says he's transforming into a Johnson. That's we really mustn't. Wow. So have you run the game yourselves? I mean that's an absurd question for a game designer, but like what are there any unexpected surprises as you've been playtesting Johnson²?
So Chris, who plays... Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I know, you go ahead.
Yeah, I think Chris has done some playtesting for us, and it's through his playtesting is that we realised how modular the experience could be, and we kind of lent into that going forward. Of that, how some players, some of the players he had really latched onto one particular Johnson. And that really changed the course of their story in ways in which, we didn't anticipate. But, I suppose that is the beauty of games like this, is that so much can be changed based on the delivery of a warden. That I think Chris's group really liked Blue Johnson. So he became like a de facto member of the gang, helping them solve the mystery, which is a development isn't in the book, but
yeah, is there a Johnson Fatal? Like one that everybody's really drawn
to? There is now.
Oh, yes. Just
I feel like we did miss the opportunity. Well, it's not too late. It's still a live document, but to have a Lady Johnson feels...
What? Yeah, you got to get Smurfette in there. That's just part of it. Lady Johnson.
Yeah.
Or even just like implacably asexual but very, very alluring Johnson, like just the pheromone Johnson, who everyone's like, ooh, that's a hot Johnson.
There is a very handsome Johnson.
There is a handsome Johnson, but he's been exiled to the jungle because he makes the other ones feel bad.
Oh, Johnson envy, says Gina. As Raphael says, Janeson. That's a great name for Johnson. Janeson. Yeah, Johnson Fatal is a great band name, Shock. I completely agree. Gosh, it just doesn't stop with this. You must have been a giggling fit every time you played this with people. Is there yeah, go ahead. Or was you just, yep, I'll keep throwing you the ball for yes or no questions. How does that sound as an interviewer? That's a real win there. Do you find playing Johnson² that there, I mean, as in all things, so this might not even be a fair question, but tonally, there are people who just don't get it. So when they're hoping for immediate wood chipper, and instead they're like, oh, there's a bunch of these just very queer Johnsons bumping about, and we have to sort of tonal compatibility, any sort of concerns with the normal, here's a $20 word, milieu of the OSR crowd.
I think, to be fair, that's still something that we're kind of working on.
Yeah.
Especially because the default panic table that's in the Mothership book doesn't quite fit the tone, and I think we're still kind of trying to work out if we should make our own and add it in, just temporarily to get in on the Johnson action.
Gina in the chat says, is there a Johnson measuring contest? I think that's definitely one of those slices of life. They all just line up against the wall, and you measure your Johnsons as you go. We're going to get banned.
That's a good bit.
Yeah.
That's going in the document. That is a good joke to add in one of the dormitories. That's going
Jason. Yeah, this is mostly for us to really workshop Johnson² as we jump in together. I wanna ask you here we are with a microphone and about 10 minutes left before things get really lightning round. But yeah, I would love for you to be thinking about what you would like to talk about. And I will say that just so it's in your minds as I read out one or two more chat questions here. But let's keep it fresh. Let's keep it funky. Until then, Axiom Delver says, how is the court held? Is it more of an Among Us rules or Werewolf the board game rules?
So there's kind of like set times where you can gather people up to make your accusation, or to just sort of have people in place, because the way the module works is it does take place on a timeline. So you do get a certain amount of actions to do, an amount of things to investigate before you then can make accusations, and that's just to stop, players. If you let people become very suspicious over one character, they'll spend 3 hours in that character's bedroom. So we think, let's help people along, help people get into the mystery of it. And and to that fact, whenever you go into a new room, there's a table to roll to see who's there, and that will keep things fresh for new players. And if you run it multiple times, things will go different ways just based on who people encounter first and how vaguely suspicious what they're doing seems.
There are also more than just Johnsons. There's a few staff members, I'm told, NPCs that are available on there. So not everybody's a Johnson the whole time. What can we expect on the NPC front?
Similar to the Johnsons, they're also quite suspect, and they have their own things going on as well as how they kind of interplay with the Johnsons themselves. But one of the main staff members is the administrator, who kind of serves as the client, hiring the players. So this administrator it pretty much leads with the financial incentives to do this job the right way. Like, and you don't want to get on Janus Corp's bad side. So if you go in there and just start kicking down doors and disrupting the project, there is you stand to lose a bonus. And if you really screw things up, you might get blacklisted by the company, and who knows what happens after that.
Right. Two questions, one from me, one from the chat. Let's do the chat first. In the in-game time, and you had talked about this a little bit with your cork and string conspiracy board of how to just keep track of all of the insane plots happening. But I would love to hear more about that. Like when you move into rooms, I'm sort of echoing chat here. When I entered in this room, does like the clock move forward 20 minutes? Does the warden have a lot of bookkeeping to do in the background? How does that work?
There's not too much bookkeeping because we had a lot of conversation about like how do we set times and stuff, and so to make it easier for the warden, it's literally just like set investigative actions. I can't remember off the top of my head if entering a room is one of them. I think it might be, but it might be separated by area rather than room.
One of the main inspirations.
Not too hard to keep track of.
One of the main inspirations that I had in mind was Bacto's terrifying cuisine. And there's the idea of, you have like 12 rounds to cook the best meal for Bacto that you can, and moving between parts of the station costs a turn, investigating a room costs a turn, right? And then you use that to minimize that bookkeeping, so you're not keeping track of like minute by minute plays.
Right. That's really useful. Did the Johnson count truly come down to knowing you wanted to depict the Last Supper in the centerfold of the book, and that's how you decided on Johnson Primes, or did that just work out? What's the story there?
The Johnson count came down because we ran out of colours and it started to get confusing. Cyan and blue they're already too close.
Yes, the fuchsia Johnson did not make the cut the way that magenta and carnadine did. Yeah.
The Last Supper stuff. Obviously, there's a grand tradition in science fiction, and obviously Alien in particular, where Mothership gets its stuff, gets so much inspiration from, of using kind of the mythological naming conventions. So we did that for Janus Corp and Gemini, and this whole thing of duality and twins and things like that. So in the book, there's a couple of illustrations that kind of harken back to that big, like the mythological naming conventions in like science fiction, Alien, Romulus, and etc. So the Last Supper was kind of another tongue-in-cheek way of us doing that.
A Johnson² religious experience, I think, can be expected. Especially, like, the setting this around holidays seems like quite a delight as you're watching, like, Johnson culture unfold inside the laboratory. That we touched on this a bit, but it's being asked about in the chat, and I'm curious, too, are there any Johnsons where you're like, there's no room for this Johnson, and try as we might, they simply cannot be included?
I think it was more the other way around of like, we really love this Johnson, but there's just, we already have too many. So it wasn't like, we there isn't room for this John because it doesn't fit the tone. And it was more like, how many can we cram in and how many get sacrificed to just word count.
The Johnson just won't fit, says Gina. Gosh. Thanks, Gina. Matt Pena, the mayor of Panicland, says, will we see any Milk Bar Easter eggs?
Ooh.
Pierogi.
Watch this
Fridays.
space. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Some pierogies in the fucking food generator. Yeah. Let's go.
Clean. Someone says, what the hell is Viridian? That's funny. Tuthida, Elliot Norwood says, is there potential for replayability by changing whodunit easily?
Well, I think
you
there's.
just change the color name.
I guess, but I suppose the experience is replayable without changing. But I suppose replayable for the warden, especially because, like Sam said, depending on which room you enter and when, and rolling on the table changes who you meet and all that, etc. And so I think for the warden, it would be quite a modular experience to kind of go back and play with different players. I feel like.
Yeah, go
on. I feel like the Johnsons are also suspicious. That even though the book is written with having one in mind, I feel like it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to just dial up one of the Johnsons' horrible side hustles and have that take precedence, and having kind of so that you could potentially run it again like that as well. But
that's a great idea, and I think there's also, if it was players wanting to rerun it, there are a couple things built in that you could catastrophically mess up this place, and if that happens, you easily could run it again, because there are a couple different outcomes that really radically change how this thing runs.
That's really exciting, and it seems refreshing, kind of echoing Octopus Inc. there, that it's about warden fatigue at a certain point, right? Like you're like, oh, I love this game, but I've kind of already done that. I'm also tickled fuchsia at the thought of just one of them having just these side hustles. Like one of them's just got an illicit Facebook marketplace equivalent that's happening out of the back of the lab. There's I guess there's just no end to build your own Johnson. That's just part of it. It's a made up game. I rediscover in each of these chats that do whatever you want. No one's stopping you. There are no Johnson police. Call Johnson.
Truly.
Wow. Earlier I had prompted you to what do y'all want to talk about while you're here? Anything top of mind for the three of you extremely handsome writers? I know. Now that we're here.
I just assumed Eric would start. I'm not sure why.
Eric, he's ideal leader.
Things to talk about.
Yeah, look around the room. That'll help.
God.
No, it's totally all right. I'm excited for Mothership Month to draw to its conclusion. Mostly because there's so much work to be done. I am pleased we had this conversation, because it looks like the chat specifically added a bunch of really thoughtful Johnson things to the old Johnson. Janeson might be the crowning gem for my achievement that we've brought here today. I'm really proud of having the canvas ready for someone to add that brush stroke to it. Mothership Month lasts for, gosh, I want to say less than 6 days now. There is something extra kooky going on, where specifically Mothership coerced Backer Kit into creating a group backer train, which I hadn't noticed at first until I went on to Dog Eat Dog's Backer Kit page and was like, whoa, that's a huge... Oh, no, it wasn't for us. It's for everybody. But if you back any one Mothership Month campaign, all of them get their backer trains extended. What does that mean? Very little during the present moments. But at the end of Mothership Month, or any Backer Kit campaign, there is a 10-minute window where if you just keep backing the project every 10 minutes or adjusting your pledge level in an upward trajectory, it keeps going. Gentlemen, there might be a world where Mothership Month rocks on through December. I don't know how avid the community is going to be, and I'm slightly terrified by it.
That's an exciting prospect, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Christmas
I mean, the
miracle.
Between kept going for like a week or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. And they made just thousands.
Yeah, they had a
Long
very
we keep
active
backing, the more Johnsons we get to write.
one Johnson per day. You heard it here. We'll just keep cramming in Johnsons. Yeah. I love that. I do want to just sort of touch on your fun play styles here at the ends of things. Eric, Sam, Joshua, do you play Mothership, and what do you like to play as? What do you like to do when you're playing Mothership?
Oh, I
We
typically
have
end up
played
running.
Mothership.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go. I think that I love doing the same thing I love doing in all tabletop role-playing games, where I just like finding a character with a bit of sort of story, something to them, and just running with that and seeing what they do in whatever situation they're in. Obviously, like I do a lot of screenwriting and stuff as well. I think we all do. So we really do treat it like a character exercise for most of the time.
I think when it comes to characters, like try as I might, I think I'm just a bit of too much of a contrarian, that I always build characters that are a little bit against type.
Yeah.
I know when we played Cyberpunk, I was straight away walking around with my longbow in Night City. Like, it just happens to me. And I think we did some playtesting for a different module, I think, which hasn't come out yet. And I was playing like an occultist, and I don't know why, in space. But ironically, without knowing it, there did happen to be ghosts in that module. So my cultist, not so out of type, but yeah, it does happen to me a lot. I tend to
Jeremy,
play
if you're
strange
listening,
things.
it was worth it all along. I don't know who Jeremy is. Someone also says, if Mothership season extends into the next quarter, the final goal is extra long Johnson. I think that's.
We did
There
have
might be
Snake
something in
Johnson
there for
at
anyone
one
who
point,
wants an
right?
extra long Johnson. It's not what you want it to be, though.
Yeah, I find myself the one of my favorite things to do with Mothership is to really lean into like the full extent of what classes can be. So, like instead of like the scientist, one of my favorite ones was like I ran into a player who was like, oh no, they're a culinary expert, like they're a master chef. They have like science applications, but like they're a clear master. Or like a teamster who like, yeah, they're a janitor. That's their whole thing. It's not like, oh, I can fix the AC unit. It was very much like, well, I know mops. That's my thing. And
Yeah. I've been something I've been thinking about specifically Mothership is I recently just finished the Endymion book series, the last of the Hyperion series. And the idea of playing a space Catholic, like just a devout man who believes in God in the face of these horrors, I think is quite interesting. Not necessarily Catholic, just a religious person.
I played an android chaplain once, where like the church had assigned the android to be the purveyor of faith on a certain colony, but like the obvious limitations therein, especially because it was like a humanist faith, and so it was just a real hot mess of contradictions that the android was also parsing through. Wow. Any thoughts from you, Eric, on being a forever warden?
No, I've been playing a lot of games recently, and I was like, oh, it'd be nice to have a chance to play for one. I mean, wardens are players anyway, but
Yeah.
But I love GMing. I get a lot of joy from it, and yeah, like obviously we became friends because I offered to run as a game of 5e at the time, and it's good. My kind of main vice is just saying to these guys once a week, I'm like, oh, I found this new game. Do you want to try this? Do you want to try this? And we never get a campaign going because we're just playing different shit all the time.
Find the Johnsons.
We've got this long-running thing. Whenever Eric brings a new random, like interesting new TTRPGs, I make a character and I die immediately. I don't know what it is. I've seen like Wolves on the Coast, Cyberpunk. I roll I'm dead. That's it. It's my fate to roll a weird little rat man and die straight away.
My friends, thank you so much for joining us all the way from across the pond. It was such a wonderful conversation here to have the three of you and your perspectives. I'm reminded that as you're playing Mothership, at certain points you're going to encounter hardship, and though you'll look behind you and see only one set of footprints, you realize that is when a Johnson was probably carrying you. I am Cameron Streetmatter. Please investigate the Dog Eat Dog, as well as JOHNSON² on Mothership. Back them all. It is an inevitability in which you can only eventually participate. So get it out of the way. Do it now. We love each of you in an uncannily similar fashion, but if you look closely, you'll be able to spot the details and differences, especially around the insectoid ones. Gentlemen, thanks again. I am signing us off. Have
Thank you very
a
much.
great evening. So long.
Thanks for having us.